important. And I made that point, I think, previously, all coming together in a bit of a perfect storm, in a sense. Yeah.
I know, like, there's the obvious arguments why this is wrong, but, like, in terms of their own logic, they're saying that you're not human if you don't come to Christ. Is that what they're saying?
Well, first of all, human being has reason. The human who doesn't use reason is not really a human being. As you said at the beginning, I'm a reasonable human being and I know the truth of Jesus, therefore reason and Jesusness go together, and therefore if you're not into Jesus, clearly you're not reasonable.
But then you transfer back being human to being human again by coming to Christ.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not like a separate...
It's not what, and that's very important, and I made that point, I think, previously, that the anti-Judaism and even the anti-Semitism that we're starting to encounter now is not racial. It's not racial. So a Jew who converts, all of a sudden he's reasonable and he's fully human. We'll see that change in Spain.
So anti-Semitism at this stage is still not racial?
Not racial. It's starting to smell a little bit racial, but not really, because they still want, the Christian fantasy at this point is still that Jews will convert. That will change.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it more so the lack of reason, therefore lack of humanity is falling in line, really? So therefore...
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Okay, I've said all of that. Yeah. So that's where these images come from. Remember, we looked at this in week 1. Yes? These counterposed images of synagoga and ecclesia. And they're all over Europe. This is also the great age of the construction of the great monasteries, the great churches, the great cathedrals of Europe are built now. Yes? So you don't find these great buildings until the 12th and 13th century. It's only in the 12th and 13th century that Europe merges from its economic slumber and the great cathedrals are built, and many of them are adorned with this image. But it's not just... You can see now the whole discourse that's underwriting it. The Jew is contrary to reason. It's not just the broken staff, the broken political authority, the Jews, that the law is no longer in place and that's why the law is falling from her hand. But she's blind. She's blind to reality, precisely because of the reasons that we mentioned. And so it's through that combination of persecuting society, anti-Semitism, this psychological projection of otherness and terror and fantasy onto the Jews, combined with scholasticism, which has removed Jew from the category of the human, which enables these kinds of images to start developing. Jews associated with the devil. Yes, you have one verse in John, the synagogue is the abode of the devil, or your father is the devil. But we don't find art like this in Byzantine Christianity. We don't find art like this in the first 1,000 years. So we have to ask why, how come now? And so we've tried to explain some of the different reasons. So you can see the Jew and the devil, bit of a close-up.
What is your 3 faces?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
So, scholastics in general, that was like...
No, auf Jiddisch.
Sorry.
Auf Jiddisch. Frag auf Jiddisch. No, I'm just joking.
Scholasticism in general, that's sort of like, it's not quite the Renaissance yet, right? It's
No.
Because it's still very religious.
Yeah.
Theology.
But the Renaissance is also very religiously inspired, but it's a more humanistic religiousness.
I thought the Renaissance got rid of religion.
Doesn't get rid of. Yeah, it tones down a little bit. It's more interested in Plato, and we'll get there a little bit towards the end. The foundational text of the Renaissance, anyone know what it's called? The text which... The Oratio Dignitae Homine, the Oration on the Dignity of Man by Pico della Mirandola, draws on all the traditions of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, but its focus is more just the human being as human being. So it does liberate a little bit out of the authority of the church, but it's still very religious. But it's different. But this is very medieval. This is the 12th century Renaissance, very medieval. So it's here that we start to see, and these are drawn from all over the place, but you'll find churches, the art of churches all over the place, in Germany, in France especially, with all kinds of crazy images. Here, the conception of the Antichrist. The Jew giving birth, fathering, siring the Antichrist. the association with these rather grotesque figures. Or here the Jew calling out the devil from some kind of magic. You can see here, and we'll talk about this in a moment, what's the Jew holding? Bag of money. We'll talk about that in a moment. And he's crucifying a little kid. So we see it's not just that Jews killed Jesus once back when, even though if you actually open the Gospels, who killed Jesus? The Romans. What have the Romans ever done for us? But we now find Jews present-day Christ killers. We'll come back to the money in a moment. I think we saw this one maybe in week 1. I'm not sure of the Judenzahl. You'll find this in lots of places in Germany. And here you can see, and it's crazy. It's crazy. Ixnay on the pork, eh? Jews don't do pork. But here we have Jews eating pork, eating pig shit. Jew as devil, wearing the badge, which we'll talk about in a moment as well. Yes? So this is where the Nazis get it from. It comes straight out of medieval Christendom. Jews being forced to wear other clothing, identifying clothing. But here what interests me more is the association with the devil and things that never were. Things that never were. It's one thing, it's anti-Jewish to say, Judaism, Jews, come on, get with the program. We're all on iPhone 10 and you're on iPhone 1, you dickhead. That's one thing. That's anti-Jewish. I mean, a bit silly, but it's another thing that it has no basis in reality. Zero. It's a Christian, some psychological terror on the part of the Christian that has to other the Jew in a certain way. Oh, and it's here that we get these extraordinary accusations of blood libel. Who's heard of the blood libel? Miley? Yeah. Oh, you're a Viva and you are? Lana. Tell me about the blood libel. What is it?
In medieval Europe, like around Passover, the Jews make a ritual bread, and they believe that they were taking Christian children to make bread when they went missing.
Right, so she gets a cigar. So Jews eat on Passover this flatbread. The first day it's quite tasty. By day 7, you want to kill yourself. It's so dry. But that's what Jews eat, and they make a very special flatbread throughout the festival. Develops this idea that Jews need the blood of a Christian child to make this ritual bread. And so we see this extraordinary phenomenon across Western Europe of accusations of ritual murder. If a child went missing, and people died in the medieval world for all kinds of reasons. A child dies, and the body's never found. Oh, the Jews took the child to make their Passover bread. And then again, the leaders would be round up and hanged on the spot, and often entire communities just massacred the next day. You can see here the very classical depiction of the Jew. You can see the yellow badge, yes, whence the yellow star of Nazi times. You can see also the funky hat, the pointed hat, which Jews were required to wear. Yeah? Not to mention the Jews' blood, ixnay on the blood, as well, yeah, with ritually kosher-wise, yeah.
Were these accusations made all year round? How does it work?
So they can be made all year round, but they tended to happen Easter time. Again, these periods where there's this primal anxiety on the part of the Christian. What are we? Are we Jew? Are we Christian? Where do we come from? There's some inner psychological unease that the Jew triggers on the part of the Christian. The first of these happens in 1144 in England, with William of Norwich, disappears, young guy. His body's never found. I think it's the father, I can't remember the exact details. The father, 6 years, no one says anything for 6 years. 6 years later, the father says, oh, it was the Jews who did it. And then that developed into a thing, and it took off all across Europe. And in fact, you have what's the word I'm looking for? Cults of worship develop around these children. They get elevated into the role of latter-day Christs, that the Jews have taken this child and sacrificed him, and again, they've done to this child what they did to Jesus way back when. Yeah, but exactly, but cults surround them and devotion towards them. So again, you can see the little circle marking the Jew as they take the nice Christian boy, who seems to be smiling, which is a bit odd. Maybe he's in on the joke. Same deal, this one's a little bit more grotesque.